For Town Talk today, we have Melissa Arrighi, the Plymouth Town Manager. Welcome to the set.
Thank you.
We have lots to talk about today. Let's start with the Friends of the Manomet Youth Center. They've done a lot of stuff. We've done a story about their renovations and what's going on there.
You know, they've done a lot for the community, particularly that Manomet Youth Center was in jeopardy. The enrollment was really down, and they've been able to raise funds, make the building much nicer, help with programming, keep staff on. So not only do we owe them real thanks, which I think that we've covered some of that, and Betty Cavaco, who leads it, has done a ton of work. But we had a conversation about expanding their scope and maybe not looking at just Manomet Youth Center now because they've had successes, but looking at our youth in general in Plymouth and what other after-school activities. So specifically, I'm talking about fields. One of the things that we've talked about in Plymouth is a long time is we have this great facility at Forges Field, but we have an opportunity to expand there. So I spoke to Betty about it just initially, and she expressed some interest because that's really, I think, a passion of hers is the Plymouth youth, and what can we do to expand the actual building of fields and make them more available?
That's great.
I think so too. I hope it happens.
That's great. So all different kinds of sports too? I mean, or is it
So when I spoke to the recreation director, she said that they have the most demand for an all-purpose field.
Oh, okay.
And then possibly a soccer field, although maybe something else. So I don't think we've determined that yet. I'll be sitting down with the Friends president sometime in the next week.
Okay.
And then I really need to do a full Forges Field presentation for the public at large because there's a long history here of how we acquired it, what it is meant for, and I think it's time to refresh everybody's memories and then see if we can afford it.
That's great. That's great. Got to support the youth and all their,
I agree.
all the sports. That's wonderful. The water ban, big topic going on here with this drought, which is continuing. We've had a couple of days of rain, but it's just not enough. So what's going on?
It isn't. Particularly, we have some supply issues in West Plymouth because we're trying to balance the need in that area of town as well as the cranberry growers that have some rights for use of that water.
Okay.
So we can only run that Darby well so many hours a day under restrictions that we have. Now, we've partnered, I think, really well with the cranberry growers as well as with DEP. The local Lakeville office has been very good to us. However, they are concerned about our water usage. So we put the initial ban on. We saw a reduction of about 1 million gallons a day.
Okay.
And it's almost unbelievable to think that in Plymouth you can have a demand of 7 million gallons a day. So we're able to lower that down.
7 million gallons a day.
And we have the capacity, but our own infrastructure sometimes leads to a problem, particularly in that area. So if we have to take this Darby well offline, then we're running 2 other pumps, one in North Plymouth, one downtown at different locations and bringing it up to West Plymouth. Now, we all know when you're running equipment all the time like that to meet the demand, you start to worry about if that equipment has a failure. Now what do you do?
Right.
How do you actually supply that area of town? So it's been a real tricky balance for us this year. Doesn't usually happen to us this strongly. So we are hopeful for some rain because we know that there's frustration in the public that they'd like to see us lift that ban, and we're trying to.
But it's great that people are responding to it and following, you know, the direction and everything. And I know my grass is completely brown, and
I've heard that.
and it's sad to look around. But I do have to say, and I'm not going to name any places, but I do drive through town, and there's certain places, even in West Plymouth, the industrial type areas that you see their sprinklers. And do they have a different setup? And
they do. So a lot of them have their own wells that they're pumping from. So it's still coming from our overall usage in the aquifer, but it's not coming from what we're trying to do, which is a public water supply and demand. However, I will tell you in Plymouth, it doesn't surprise me, but there are people that watch for that. They write down the address, they email us. So,
so
even as of this morning, I had the health department checking on 16 different locations from North Plymouth through to West Plymouth on if these people have private wells. So I have to tell you, almost every time we have checked, they do.
They do have private wells. Yeah, because you can just drive down, you see green grass. Brown grass, green grass, and you're like, okay, I don't. So it's good. Just wanted to clarify that because it's hard when you see that when you're trying to comply, your grass is completely brown, or or you see it, driving through a certain areas of town, and the bigger industrial areas are watering their grass, and you're like, I don't get it.
And that might change in the future as the state regulations as well as the federal guidelines get stricter, not just about what we're using and pumping, but what we're literally pulling from our own aquifer
So even
system.
if they have their own well, it's still pulling from that, and they are going to perhaps in a severe drought as we're in, may have to change some of those rules.
I think as regulations change in the future, Plymouth is going to be restricted on how much we can pull, and it will affect them also.
Okay. We have about 1 minute left.
Okay.
Do you want to touch on the budget real quick?
Early stage of the budget process. For the last few weeks, I have presented to the Board of Selectmen what I would love to see as some new initiatives. We're not sure where we can afford that yet, but those would include areas that look at recreation, including the fields, some beautification. We still have 36 town-owned buildings, so even as we think about moving into a new town hall, we need to do a better job taking care of the buildings we have. So I'll again be looking at some kind of facility management. We paid all that money for a study. I think that we need to use it. So I'm trying to keep my concerns right around enjoying what we already have here in Plymouth. And that includes some kind of seasonal litter crew that literally we assign to a different section of town every day during the, maybe not every day, but 5 days a week during the summer season, and they deal with graffiti and litter and cleanup. I'm hoping that we'll be able to establish that.
That would be a great program.
I agree.
To keep the tourism and the residents happy with their beautiful town. Thank you for coming on, as always. Great information.